Hey guys, it's Drew. Thank you for checking out the Sober Fix podcast, where we talk about addiction and living life sober, one day at a time. If you like what you hear, go ahead and follow us. And if you get some time, check out our Instagram page at the Sober Fix podcast, and also our YouTube and TikTok at the Sober Fix. Hope you enjoy the episode. All right, what is up, guys? It's another episode of the Sober Fix podcast. We were just talking about balance before we started here, and that's something Robert's been working on. It's something that I am always working on in recovery. Today is another good day. It's one of my favorite days of the month. It's the Ask It Basket. We are getting questions answered from Whitney, Robert, myself. They do a lot of service work. They go into treatment centers, and they help people start their recovery journey. Everyone has questions. I remember sitting in treatment and wondering, how do I do this? How do I start this? How do I go about getting a sponsor? Whitney, thank you for coming on. Robert, how are you doing, man? What's new with you?
I am well. I'm in this position now where I'm trying to find out what's most important and then pursuing that, because there's a lot of things I can be doing, but there's only a certain amount of things I should be doing. And so what I should do is what I am doing, hopefully, between my higher power and just understanding my bandwidth, how much time I have available. Because, back in the 60s, there was a book written called The Tyranny of the Urgent. And I have to understand what's important, because if I don't, then the urgent takes control. And then I'm busy for the sake of being busy, but I'm accomplishing very little. And so I'm just trying to focus on what is quality instead of what is quantity. Does that make sense?
Oh, that makes total sense. How about you, Whitney? What have you been up to? What's new with you?
Hi, yes, life is treating me well. Like Robert said, I just started a new position at a treatment center down here in Orem, and I'm loving every second of it. Just working with sponsees. I just passed somebody off on their fist up today, so that's always fun. Other than that, I'm just enjoying my life down here in Orem, doing some recovery.
That's super cool. How do you like working in treatment? Have you worked in treatment before?
No, this is the first time. It's something I've been aspiring to do for about a year now, and I think I found the right treatment center to get into. Really great program they're working, really great system they have there. I love my fellow employees, and there's a lot of success coming out of this treatment center. So as far as what I do there, I'm a case manager, so I get to work with clients directly and kind of see them through their process, and it's been really exciting so far.
That's super cool. Congratulations on the new job. I'm sure everyone's gonna love it. It's nice when you're in treatment and the person that you're talking to about it, your case manager, understands and has been through it. It makes such a difference. Robert, I want to ask you, that makes me think of a question. If you're working in treatment and you're sober, you're in recovery, how do you manage working in treatment, but then also having your program? Because I hear some people that say, hey, look, be careful. You're working in treatment. Make sure that just work doesn't become your only program. How do you keep that from happening?
It's understanding the difference between the two. When I used to work in treatment, because I got my San Bernardino Valley College, I got my degree in alcohol and drug studies back in the early 90s. And all of a sudden, my advocation became my vocation. And I found out early on that working in treatment can really drain you. And a lot of times we mistake working in treatment for being treated. And so once again, I had to find the balance between the two. So I had to step up my involvement with my sponsor, and I had to find meetings that would feed me, because I was feeding more than I was being fed. Does that make sense? And it's so subtle that one starts taking precedence over the other, and that's a very dangerous position to be in. It's not that people necessarily relapse who work in treatment, but they certainly, it's a trap to mistake working in treatment for being treated. I'm a chronic alcoholic, and I need to stay in recovery personally, more importantly, because if I drink or if I use or if I'm not happy, joyous, and free and it doesn't reflect in my personal recovery, then what do I really bring to my clients anyway?
Yeah, I like that. It's like the concept of like, in order to give, like your cup has to be full first.
Exactly.
Yeah. I want to start on the first question over here for you, Whitney. It says, "What is the best piece of advice for sobriety that a sober person can give?"
I love that question. God, there's so many answers to it, but I would say the most important thing is surrendering and just letting go of, everything you're used to. I mean, you have to come in and change absolutely everything about your life, friends, I mean, it's a whole entire life change. And not only that, but just getting into the program and rather than resisting it like I did initially, um, you can't start to work the program and it won't start to work for you unless you completely surrender and um, kind of let go and take advice and take some instruction from people who have done gotten sober successfully. And so that's what I did. I was resistant for so many years. And then when I finally, felt like I just wanted to give up. I all my ideas were just gone to the wind. I just took some advice and followed a couple good examples in the program and did exactly what they did. And it's worked so far. So I think letting go and willingness and surrendering are huge to get started.
Yeah, I think that was awesome advice. Would you add anything to that, Robert?
No, that was a perfect answer.
Yeah, it was. All right, let's go to Robert for this. Let's see. How do you deal with emotional relapse, and does it get better with time?
The second part first, it is designed to get better over time. If it's not getting better, then what I'm doing along the way is not correct. Things get easier over time. Just like in step one, we have a real hard time conceding to our innermost self we were alcoholic and staying away from that first drink or that first drug or that first negative behavior is very challenging. Then we get to step 9 and these promises, all of a sudden are coming true. Step 10, we're restored to sanity. We'll act like we're normal. So it is designed to get better over time. Staying away from emotional relapse is to stay away from things that sabotage me. And that's where working the steps, working with the sponsor, and redirecting our thinking, it talks about ways that we will develop new attitudes and outlooks upon life. Those are designed to change. Well, if I don't do the things that precipitate change, I'm likely not to change. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I like that you talked about the attitude change, and I'll go to you with this, Whitney. Do you feel like you've had that attitude change towards life, just that kind of shift? I know for me, I realized that, like, I think I was around 6 months sober, and I just realized that I felt more positive. And I think what it was is having a recovery program was starting to give me hope, and I didn't feel like I felt bad about my past, but I didn't feel like terrible every day about it. Did you notice your attitude starting to change?
Absolutely. At first, you go in, with a terrible attitude, and everything seems to be picking on you. You just play the victim. You speak victimese. I mean, after I got a sponsor and started working the steps, I would say about the same time, 6 months. I think the step work it was the biggest thing for me, which kind of it changed my perspective on life. It made a difference in exactly how I looked at life and my perspective on life. I just noticed I have a better attitude about everything. And I was able to manage life as it came, with a little more class and with a little more less reactivity, I guess I should say. But yeah, there was a major shift for me at about 6 months. And now it's just life isn't so hard. There aren't any big deals, like things just happen and you have a process and you have a way of handling them. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that you talk about not just reacting to life, because it took me a good amount of time to look back and realize that that's what I was doing. It was like everything was a huge deal for me. I turned small problems into insanely big problems, and I want to go to you with next one, Robert. It says, what do you do when you're having triggers?
Well, first of all, I have to recognize that they're triggers, because this trigger is only a trigger when I label it to be such. I think I'm fine. Staying close to others around me who know me. An example, I still have a sponsor and I've been sober almost 39 years, and he knows me, and I stay accountable to people who will notice changes in me that aren't positive. And just, I think accountability. An example, Whitney and I are very good friends. And Whitney, she should know that I'm accountable to her because I'm a sober mentor, I'm a sober influence. And if Whitney or someone like her sees something in me, I may not see it because my ego thinks I'm fine. My ego's job is to tell me it doesn't exist, which should scare you, immensely. However, Whitney loves me and you love me and care for me. So you're more apt to point out things that I don't want to see that will help me get on track.
Yeah, I could totally relate to that. It's like I could be having serious issues when I was in early sobriety, and a lot of it had to be pointed out to me. I didn't realize some of the things that I was doing that was putting me on kind of a slippery slope, and making me super emotional and kind of just pushing me just a little bit closer to a drink each day. I want to ask you, Whitney, let's see, there's so many good ones on here. A lot of people use alcohol to feel a deeper connection. Do you have any continual struggles with intimacy or romance?
Interesting. I understand the method of, using or drinking to get closer to someone and take off the edge, I guess.
Mhm.
For me, an authentic connection needs to come from a clear state of mind, and a sober state of mind. And I wouldn't want anything other than that. So I think real connection, whether it be romantic or not, is going to come from a sober, recovered state of mind. And I would think that would attract the same. And so I understand trying to ease your way into, a connection or a relationship that way. But yeah, I think authentic connection is going to be your best romantic and friendship connection you can ever have.
Yeah, do you want to add anything to that, Robert?
Only that I really like Whitney's answer. We're ready when we're ready. Sometimes one of the things that is a challenge to every person of addiction is to substitute one addiction or behavior for another and think we're okay. I'm not drinking, but I'm on my way to my next drink because I'm replacing alcohol with Betty Sue or a behavior, or I'm replacing not, doing meth with gambling. And we have to be a sober to enter into sober relationships. And being around alcohol my entire life, my first job, as many of our listeners know, I was a waiter serving alcohol from day one. That's what I was before I went into treatment, and that was my first available position. So substituting things, even though I wasn't drinking, that's the trap for people. I'm in a relationship I shouldn't be in, but at least I'm not drinking. I'm gambling, but at least I'm not doing this. And little by little, we use people, places, and things as escapes when that will eventually lead us back to our addictive drug of choice, which can be a real trap. That's where accountability really comes into play. And that's where sponsorship is so important, especially in the beginning, because we need a person, once again, who will tell us things, safe, safe things that we wouldn't tell ourselves.
Yeah, and I really like how you answered that whole thing. This is why I love throwing questions at you guys. It's so cool. I really enjoy it. I want to ask you, Whitney, about sponsorship. How you mentioned, I think it was a fifth step that a sponsee did. What is it like being in a in a position today to where now you're helping someone else out? What is that like for you?
It's quite surreal because when I started and got a sponsor and was working the steps for myself, it seemed so daunting, and it seemed so, I mean, life-changing for me. And I glorified my sponsor in that way, but once I completed my steps, and that 12th step is like, okay, jump on into service. I followed that instruction and I was scared to do it, but it's quite awesome, or I guess there's a better word for it, but it's pretty amazing to throw out that you're sponsoring and having people attracted to you and wanting you to sponsor them. It's like they see something that you don't even see in yourself at that point, but you start working with these sponsees, and you really, it's grown my program and my everything, my whole recovery so much. I cherish the times I get to spend with my sponsees because I not only do I see, growth in my own recovery every time, but leaps and bounds for them. And I see that light go on, and I see their desire to just, start wanting to do service positions themselves. And it's one of the most rewarding things. I mean, right now it's the highlight of my recovery, I would say. And that's kind of what has directed me into the treatment centers, and what made me want to do these podcasts. I've just really loved reaching out to, the newcomer, and seeing how it can change lives to get involved in this program. So yes, it's amazing to go through the process of coming into recovery and feeling like that fear and just anxiety about everything. And then a year later to be just so happy and so, service minded and just wanting to help others.
Yeah, it's almost surreal. I remember in meetings when they would say, and I don't know if they do it over there, but in California they would always ask. They basically say, raise your hand if you've worked the steps and you're available to sponsor. And I mean, for years I was in and out of 12-step stuff, and I could just never raise my hand. I hadn't started the steps, I hadn't finished the steps, I could never do that. It was cool to finally be able to raise my hand, and I relate to everything you're saying, where it's all of a sudden you're on the other side helping someone else out. And it's just super cool. There's another question here, Robert, that is related to sponsorship. It says, what do you do if you don't feel comfortable with your current sponsor?
That is, you know what? When I read that question, and Whitney comes across it as well in treatment centers, and I'm sure you have also, Drew, I find out why I'm not comfortable. A lot of times I'm not comfortable because my sponsor is asking me to do something necessary, yet it makes me feel uncomfortable, like being honest. In the beginning, man, being honest was hard to do. On page 30 of the big book, it says we had to fully concede to our innermost self that we were alcoholic. That was hard because where so many of us come from in one level or another, if we admit we're powerless, it only means that you take something from me. I don't understand that admitting powerlessness is the door that opens to power. And so in the beginning, I wanted to fire everyone who told me the truth about me. And I had to understand that I needed to be honest with someone to the degree of being uncomfortable. Having said that, I have let go of a few sponsors along the way, and some have moved only because I replaced them with someone who could take me to a place that I hadn't been before. And that's happened to people that I sponsor as well. And there's nothing wrong with asking another person to be your sponsor. Whitney and I have had this conversation, and I hope I've been a help to you. At the end of the day, I need to grow. And if the person who is currently my sponsor isn't putting in me that position to take me to the next level, or maybe they want to, but they're just not capable, then I need to be always moving, always growing, because the way I stay recovered is by staying in a position of recovery. I've been very fortunate over the years that the majority of transitional sponsorship is because individuals have moved or they've died or what have you. But I tell my sponsees, look, at any time you think that I'm not the right person for you, I don't care why, just you need to move on. And if I need to help you move on, I'll introduce you to someone that can be more effective for you, because at the end of the day, it's about them. It's not about me. And so, but I need to check my motives. Why do I want to fire this person? Why do I want to let them go? Is it because they really aren't good for me, or because I'm not good for me? And I want to let them go, because letting them go saying they're wrong is a lot easier than saying I'm wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. And I like that you mentioned it. It's really about them. They feel like they're not able to grow or continue growing, like you mentioned, for whatever reason. It's, you're putting it on them. Like, hey, it's up to you. Like, if you need to go somewhere else, like, I'm not going to be like mad about it. You know, if you feel like you need to you want to go in a different direction and you want to find a different sponsor, like, that's totally cool. We could still talk and stuff. We're still friends. I like that. Let me see what we got here, Whitney. This is actually about a sponsor too. How often should I be meeting with my sponsor per week?
I think there's a particular amount of time that is necessary. I think it's an individual based, thing. And I mean, depending on where you are in the program and if you're working steps, not working steps, you know, it just depends. But I would say in getting started, I like to see my sponsees once a week, if they're working on steps especially. But I mean, I'm not one of those sponsors who, asks you to call every single day. I'm here as you need me. You can choose to work your program the way you choose to work your program. But I would say, to answer the question, probably once a week is about, your traditional. Your sponsor needs to be available to you at least that much. And so, yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that answer. It's funny because as I'm reading this, I'm like picturing the person trying to like look at their future schedule, like how many times do I need to call each week? How many
Yeah.
meetings am I going to get to, so that's cool though.
Yeah.
Let me see. How about this one, Robert? How do I accept full recovery when it requires me to be sober for the rest of my...
The brilliance of 12-step recovery is the notion of one day at a time. And in actuality, I just have to be sober 24 hours. Now, I put together 14,181 of those in a row, which
Wow.
is totally mind-blowing. It just baffles me that anyone as idiotic as me can be sober as long as I've been sober.
Including holidays?
And yes, holidays, Sundays, Mondays, Tuesdays, holidays, everything in between. And we are a people who would swear off every night that we're never going to do it again. And on the way to work, we're either getting high or figuring where our next drink or drug is going to come from. We've got it all mapped out. Well, I'm okay until 10 a.m., but I need to have a course. I need to have a shot. I need to have a line. I need to have a fix. I need to have something to alter how I view this thing we call the world, because I can't go through it the way other people do. So, staying sober one day at a time is essential. Sometimes it can be shorter than that. I remember picking up a hitchhiker in Las Vegas, and I took them down to a place, Charleston and Rainbow, which back in the 80s, I'm that old. Back in those days, when you went beyond Rainbow, you were in the middle of nowhere. Red Rock Canyon was the next thing. And so I turned around and I realized how far I was from the 12:30 late lunch bunch. And I calculated that if I made the lights, I could be there in 15 minutes. So I was afraid, because between me and the Alano Club were all these bars that I had drank or wanted to drink in. And so I said to God, my higher power, I said, if you can give me 15 minutes, I'm going to be okay. And my higher power gave me 15 minutes. And guess what? I was okay. And so it 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 should never be longer. And now understand, I I know where I'm going to be tomorrow night, Lord willing, and Lord's always willing. It's me, that's the knucklehead. And I've got plans for Saturday. And I know what on paper, I know what I'm going to do on Sunday. And I even know what I'm going to do next Wednesday night. Now, whether or not I get there is another story. But providing I have that window, I know what I'm going to be doing. I know where I'm going to be. But everything is one day at a time. Now, I don't subscribe to, and this is where I get judgmental, I get to be a snob. I don't think that the person at 4 months understands what I do at 39 years, but we still have the same amount of time, because what we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. So we all just have 24 hours.
Yeah, you answered that so well. I was gonna ask you, Whitney, what would you say to people that are thinking about staying sober for the rest of the?
God, it's daunting. I remember thinking about that, trying to make that decision. Like, do I really want to dive right in and try to stay sober for the rest of my life? And it seemed impossible. God, what to say to that person that's just on that crossroads that's tough. Robert nailed it with the one day at a time. If you don't think about forever and you don't look that far into the future, anything seems possible, And if you can just get through those days, those first 24 hours at a time, for a little bit, you'll realize like you're just getting through days without trying. You have this community and you've got a whole different way of life. It gets a lot easier and easier, and soon enough you're getting months and years, and that's the beauty of this program. There's magic behind it if you just surrender and are willing to just do whatever it takes. You have to be willing to do whatever it takes in the beginning.
Let me just add to that. I was speaking up in Boise, Idaho this last Saturday night, and in the front row was my friend Ed, Ed is 90 years old. He's got 58 years of sobriety, and he got sober when he was 32.
Wow.
Oh, so here is Ed. He'll be sober 59 years, April 11th, which is crazy. I want to be Ed when I grow up, right? I want to be 90 years old in the front frickin' row, listening to a speaker. That's how I want to be. And then I met this newcomer who's in their first 30 days of sobriety at a treatment center on Wednesday. And you know what? You, Drew, Whitney B, Robert P, Ed L, and this other person, we're all doing the same thing. We're in different windows of time, but so what? They didn't have to reinvent the program for Ed any more than they had to reinvent the program for me, any more than they had to reinvent the program for you, Drew, or you, Whitney, and anyone else. We handed them the same big book. We handed them the same steps. We handed them the same advice. My sponsor's been sober 40 a long ass time, right? I mean, when I was taking my 30-day chip, Ed was taking his 20-year chip, right?
Wow.
To give you an idea of how long this cat's been sober. What really is mind-boggling is I'm doing the same thing Ed did. Whitney's doing the same thing I've done, which is the same thing you've done, Drew, which is the same thing we would tell a newcomer coming into rooms today.
Yeah, it's such a cool point. It's like I don't need to make up my own recovery program. Here's a bunch of people that have proven that something works. If you don't have any, see, because I come into the rooms of recovery and I have failed in every aspect of life, every aspect. But I stay there for about 2 weeks. I get sober, and suddenly, like, I've got a new way that everything needs to be ran. I have these new ideas of the order that I want to do the steps. I'll do like 1, 3, 9, maybe. And I start getting all these bright ideas, and I try, and I realize today it's like, I don't need to come up with anything new. People have proven to me that they've found a way to stay sober, be content sober on a day-to-day basis. I don't need to reinvent the wheel. That kind of leads me to my next question, Whitney. Was there times before you got sober this time that you were kind of like halfway in, halfway out? You know what? I think she might have got kicked. Let me ask you that, Robert. Was there times when you first got sober that did you try and invent the wheel, so to speak, like I was talking about? Were you ever trying to like halfway into recovery, halfway out, or were you someone that was able to dive in?
I wish I could say I was willing to dive in. Whitney, why don't you take that?
I'm sorry, it cut out for a minute and now I'm back, so I wasn't sure what I missed.
Yeah,
But
Whitney's still kicking it. She's all right.
yeah, no, I've tried to get sober multiple times in the past 20 years. My gosh.
Okay. Anyway, the answer is yes, because the 12 steps of recovery are very uncomfortable because they go against my selflessness and self-centeredness. The 12 steps of recovery in the first 164 pages, and that's the platform from which I speak. I'm not saying that other things don't work. I'm saying the only thing that's ever worked for me, Robert Pardon, is the same thing that's worked for you, the same thing that's worked for Whitney, Ed, and so on, as I previously stated. It's only when I didn't treat the 12 steps like a buffet, like what you said, Drew. I look at the steps, I think I can do one, maybe. I'm not saying that my life is really unmanageable, but I've screwed up a few times. And I'm not saying I'm really insane, but I could use some adjusting. And I'll make a list of the persons I had harmed, but I'm not going to say I'm sorry till they're willing to say I'm sorry to me. I'm treating recovery like a buffet, like Sizzler, like Chuckarama. Any buffet I go into, I want some of this, but I don't want any of that. Well, as long as I'm in charge, I'm not going to do things that are healthy to me. That's why it says, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not, will not completely give themselves to this simple plan. And until I was ready, when I came back after my 71-day relapse back in 1986, April 25th, 1986, I asked my sponsor, what do I do? And he said, everything I tell you to do. And he meant it. He said, if you can't do everything I say to do, let's just be friends, because I can't be your sponsor. If you want what I have and are willing to go to any lengths to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. And it had to be that for me. And all I had to do was remember that hotel room that I was at 4 hours earlier and remembering the loneliness I felt. And I was willing to do anything, even things that made me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, and it took me a long time to. I mean, you said it perfectly. I had to reach a point where I was willing to do some things that may make me uncomfortable, and things that I was scared of it. Because the thing was, it took me a long time to get sober because there was a lot of things I just wasn't willing to do. I just wasn't quite there yet. And Whitney, well, she just got kicked again. Man, it's all right. I got another question for you, Robert. Let's see what it is here. What does trusting God mean to you?
Learning to trust today is everything to me. I don't wonder anymore if I'm on the right path, because I have a relationship with God as we understood God. And it's not so much as who we believe God is, because I'm not even sure who your higher power is. I think I know who Whitney's higher power is, but it's more important that I know what your higher power does. That's the crux of the matter. So in the beginning, my higher power was the group, because I was such a tangible person. If I couldn't taste it, smell it, see it, feel it, experience it, it wasn't real. And so the individuals in the room gave me the confidence I needed to know that as long as I did what they did, I would be okay. In that it wasn't until 7 years sobriety, Drew and Whitney, that I became comfortable in finding out, okay, who is this higher power to me? Who is this God to me personally? And it didn't conflict because it says we are sure that God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. In step 2, all I have to do is came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Whether that's a sunrise, a sunset, the tide, some Greek goddess, I don't know who your higher power is. I just know what your higher power is supposed to do, and that is to keep me sober one day at a time for the rest of my life.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, Whitney, kind of the same question. What does trusting God mean to you? I think she might not have audio right now. I know the internet's been going crazy. Let me see what else we got here. This is a good one, Robert. How do you stop blaming yourself for continual relapse?
Don't relapse. At some point, we have to admit that we're just not doing it. It's kind of like making amends. My true amends, and both you and Whitney will attest to that, my true amends comes with acting as if I really feel bad about what I've done. And continual relapse just means that I'm not doing what I say I'm willing to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it's kind of, for me, it kind of reminds me what we were talking about earlier. I realized that I was not very willing because I kept relapsing at one point. And that's when I kind of, and I look back now, I'm glad that it happened, because I think it happening for me is what finally, it made me willing. It made me get more honest. It made me just get more involved. But I totally like how you answer that. That was super cool. Let me go to you, Whitney. See here. When did cravings and thoughts of alcohol use leave you or become less present?
In the beginning, they were very present, right? You're coming off of whatever you're coming off of, and all you want is that next fix. So can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm having connection issues here. In the beginning, you obviously have all those cravings and triggers full blast, right? And as you start working a program, as you start trying to, find recovery for yourself and find those connections, that support system, those do eventually go away. And you have to
A
find
bummer. That was such a good
passion
answer she was
in
working
your
on, but
recovery.
it kicked her
You
out
have
again.
to.
What do you think about that, Robert? When did cravings and thoughts of alcohol use leave you or become less present?
Well, as we said before, and Whitney, anytime you get your volume back, feel free to chime in with your viewpoint. We have to define what we're talking about, because oftentimes we're calling a craving when it really is a mental obsession, whether it's alcohol or drugs, usually within 2 weeks or certainly a month of using, unless we're totally on the other side. So let's say 60, 90 days. If I'm still craving, or that substance is still leaving my system, I could get a craving. After that, it's a mental obsession. In the doctor's opinion, says once this very same person who seemed doomed, and it talked about the phenomenon of craving developing, once the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he dismayed over solving any of them, now finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. The only requirement is to follow a few simple rules. So if I am progressing and I'm still have this mental obsession, It just means I'm not following the rules. I'm not taking the steps. I'm not working with others. I'm not taking direction from my sponsor. That's generally what it means. But in the beginning, that's why we have things such as detox, to detox ourselves. But the phenomenon of craving is only when we're using. The mental obsession occurs when we're not.
Yeah, and thank you for clarifying that, because I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people that just they don't understand that. You show up in recovery and you hear some things, and if you haven't gone through the book and you haven't got a sponsor and you don't really have a home group, you haven't been in the rooms of recovery for too long, I can understand how people would hear certain other people sharing about stuff and talking about the craving and talking about the obsession, and it might be hard to understand, so I'm glad that you go over that and you clarify that for anyone listening. Whitney, I know your internet's been all over the place. Sorry about that. Let me
So
see.
sorry.
No, you're good. It happens. It's nothing you can control. Let me see. I kind of want to go back to that question that you were answering about the higher power. I believe it was, what does like the idea of God or the concept of higher power mean to you? I think you got cut off as you were answering last time.
Sure. Yeah. Um, that's always been okay. So I grew up LDS, I'm from Utah, strong LDS family, huge impression of God as I was growing up, right? As I started to come into my own and started to party and started to try to self-discover and branch out, try something different, I guess you could say over the years, I had a resentment towards a God or a higher power, or was very resistant to anything like that, and as I started recovery down here, started to explore that again with a sober mind, my spirituality started to come back, real strong. And as I worked the steps and found that higher power and started to have a relationship with my higher power, it's the most important thing I have today, I would say. My impression of it is very different. What I consider my higher power today is very different from my impression of it or what I thought it was as a child. And so I'm glad it's developed and evolved. But yeah, it's a constant presence in my life today. You know, I have a trust and a faith in God that eases my mind as I go through the day, just knowing that I have God to rely on in my life. And I've had, spiritual experiences that prove the presence of God in my life, and I've learned to, fall back on that and really weigh into that. And it's given me a lot of peace of mind and optimism towards life. And so, yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but
Yeah, no, that was awesome. I appreciate that answer. I can really relate to it too, because as I finally got sober, I started to just rebuild that connection with the higher power. It was something that I had years before, and as drugs and alcohol started to take over my life, it was something that I kind of had to push away because I felt a bunch of shame behind it. I just knew like that moral compass was telling me like, oh, this isn't right, something's not right. And you need to like push the idea of God away, because if you think about it for too long, you're going to feel all that shame. Yeah, I guess for me, it was like a defense mechanism. And then as I finally got sober, I started to realize that, oh yeah, that's a relationship I definitely want to start building on again. Robert, I want to,
You know what? Let me interject, because you brought up something that was silently brilliant. And that is the moral compass. A compass always points true north. And did you know, I found out this nautically, do you know a ship without a compass can never lead the view of the shore? Think about that for a moment. Think about being a ship that's designed to sail in the ocean, can never leave the shoreline view without a compass. It always has to see the shore to know where it's at. And that's what a higher power does. It allows us to travel anywhere, to do anything. And it always is our guide. That higher power is like a compass that always points true north. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's super cool. As you're talking about it, I'm picturing like the ship leaving the shore, and I love how you said it allows us to travel. It allows us to branch out and experience life, knowing that higher power is with you, basically.
Yeah, because I'm no longer bondage. I'm no longer held hostage. I can go anywhere and do anything, providing my motives are correct. And the motives are accessed and directed through my higher power, which is my moral compass, as you said, which always points true north.
Yeah, I love that. That's super cool. I'm glad that I said that, and then it sparked up something in you. That's cool. Thank you for adding to that, Robert. All right, let's see here. I've had you guys for almost an hour. I think we've got two more left on the list here. Let me see what that last one.
Why don't we let Whitney take both of these since she had to leave us because of internet connection?
Oh, no, it's okay. Either way, you know?
I insist.
Yeah, no, it's all good. You're a trooper, Whitney. I'm watching you like start to answer, and then I see you get kicked out, and then I see you come back in and get kicked out, and I'm like, man, I feel that, but I can't like say anything to you because we're already like in
Well,
recording.
Right. I
that
just
was
feel so
just
bad,
that was just
taking
like
this time.
her drinking and using career. She'd come over someplace and she'd get kicked out, and then she'll
Fall
promise not
down,
to do
get
it
back up,
again.
fall down, get back up.
Oh, okay. Let me see what this is. What is your favorite coping skill when you have cravings or an obsession that can trigger you? Wow, that's a wordy one.
Yeah, it's a pretty common question, though. I get this a lot. And I always tell them I have a little system, There's no magic. I don't think there's any magic answer for everybody. It's maybe different. Some things work for some people and some things work for other people. But for me, and as just starting to work this program and getting all my, recovery minded stuff back, my spirituality back, I usually I go straight for prayer right off the bat, or call my sponsor, one of the two, reach out that way. And then I like to tell on myself. So this keeps me accountable. I like to tell a friend that I'm having thoughts or, just share it with them. So even if I don't keep myself accountable, at least somebody else keeps me accountable or even them just knowing keeps myself to keep me accountable, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. And then thirdly, this is what really works for me since, triggers and obsessions and those moments pass within 10 to 15 minutes. You just kind of have to wait them out. So what I like to do, and it always works, is help another person, even if it's just a quick, like reach out to someone who's struggling, help a stranger, even just get busy getting outside of yourself and reaching out to somebody, do some service, small or big, whatever it is. And within moments that thought is gone, you're distracted, you're off doing better things, and by the time that all ends, you're back in your right space of mind. And it seems to work for me every time. That's my go-to, my 1 2 3 system, and I promise it's never failed me. So that's my answer to that one.
That is super cool. And how'd you come up with that system?
I can't take credit for it by any means. I've heard that little bits and pieces of other people's methods, and I just kind of stacked them all together and it seems to work every time. So I don't know. It's a combo of things. You have your spirituality, you have your accountability, and then you have your service minded part of it. And it's a good combo. So I'm going to stick with it for now.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I like that you say you kind of picked up different stuff in different places. I know for me, it's like I had my 12-step stuff as the foundation that I stay consistent with. And then apart from that, I'm always just like open to trying different things. And if someone tells me something that's been working for them that they add to their program, I try it out, just having like core stuff that I do and then being open to other stuff. Robert, I was going
Absolutely.
to ask you, how do you deal with any of well, for you, I'll say like, just stress in life, like you were talking about earlier. Maybe things have been unbalanced. You've said yes to too many things. How do you cope with that today with all the time that you have sober?
I cope with it today as I coped with it as a newcomer, because again, what I do doesn't change. It's just an elevated perspective of that. I don't have the same problems that I did when I was 30, 60, 90 days because the law is not after me. I don't pay child support anymore. They're not looking to repossess my car, all those things. I'm employable, even though I don't work much. I could if I wanted to, which is a transition. So, I go back to basics, guys. I believe in HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, tired. HALT works because HALT works. And so, like Whitney, I'm honest to myself. When I'm feeling a particular way, Drew, I know I'm uncomfortable, and I ask myself, are you hungry? Should you eat? Are you lonely? Are you missing your higher power? Are you praying? Are you meditating? Am I spending quality time with Laura or my grandkids? Who am I missing? Am I angry? Do I have an unresolved, did somebody piss me off? And am I looking at the wrong way? Or am I tired? Am I physically tired? Which is usually what I am, because I just go and I'm like the Energizer Bunny. I didn't go to bed until almost 1 a.m. and I was up at 7 o'clock this morning. And I'm way too old for that stuff. So I usually nap during the day, and I haven't napped yet. And so I look at that: hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And boy, what a way for me to identify and isolate and identify what's really going on. And I'll tell you, Drew, Whitney, it's usually one of those four things. Am I hungry? Am I not? And hungry is, just because I've eaten doesn't mean I've eaten the right things. So I maintain a good diet. I don't eat what I want. I eat what I should. Am I hungry? Am I angry? Is there some unresolved? I was angry at this person who chaired a meeting. And so to resolve that anger, I went and told them, hey, I'm angry with you, and this is why. I think you treated this person unfairly based on your ego, and I dumped it, and I'm not angry about that anymore, because I set it aside and I'm onto other things. Am I lonely? The big book says that God will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. Am I lonely? Is there someone missing in my life? Do I get down to a meeting down in Orem about once a month now? I used to go every week, but my schedule, sometimes I just miss those people, and sometimes I just need to reconnect. And am I tired? Am I getting the right rest that allows me to do what I need to do? So hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And whether you're 30 minutes or 30 years sober or anywhere in between, HALT is always a good indicator of what's really going on.
Yeah, and as you're talking about that, I'm just thinking, man, I could so relate to that. I feel it. When I'm super hungry, I feel it. When I am overworked and I've said yes to too much stuff, I feel it. I feel the mood change. Like, I feel like I'm looking at things differently. Like, things that don't ordinarily or normally bother me start to bother me. And it's interesting, because if that goes on for long enough, like, a drink will start to sound good. So I love how you talk about that. Whitney, I'll just ask you, what is your experience with HALT? Can you relate to that? Hungry, angry, lonely, tired?
100%. He's so right about how that's probably the first place you need to look, because it covers so much of like our emotional, wellness, and I think, especially in recovery, especially early recovery, or somebody that's just making a big life change, those things are like blaring alarms, and I think I'm a huge believer in nutrition and, mental wellness, whole health, everything. And if you don't have a good balance of those things can get really out of whack. And like, yeah, that's a great thing to keep in your head and keep in your mind is, ask yourself, HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, tired, because it usually is pointing at one of those things. And so totally agree, 100%.
Yeah, I think and I like that you talked about, Robert. It's like, it's something that could help anyone, whether you've been sober a long time or just, or just brand new to sobriety and recovery. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you coming on again. Whitney, thanks for being a trooper and getting kicked off a million times and still coming back on to answer questions and everything. I'll ask you guys each just the same question. What's next for you? Do you have any temporary goals right now, Robert?
I don't. I just want, my overall goal is to die of old age. And I'm like Whitney. Um, I just want to serve other people. So that's all. I just want to be of value. I want to find out how I can be a maximum value to someone else. Because if there's anything, and you guys will attest to it, if there's anything that verifies my value, is to help others find the value that they have. And that really is my goal. And I'm going to go upstairs when we're done. I'm going to go see my wife. I'm going to go see my mother-in-law, and I'm going to let them know how valuable they are because of who they are, and they'll reciprocate, and I will feel valued. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Robert. What about you, Whitney? What's your next temporary goal for the near future?
I was trying to think about it, and like Robert, I don't have like a set goal that I have in mind, but I've been focusing a lot on service and, just sharing my experience. Like, these are great opportunities for me. And so I like to leave time for this. But we were talking about having a balance, with recovery and AA versus recovery. I used to be an athlete who loved exercise. And like I said, I believe in that whole health thing. So my next goal, now that you brought it up, is to get more involved physically and maybe do some, mind health, spirituality things like yoga. I used to do more of that, and I need to bring it back into my life a little bit. So I'm going to make that my goal.
Yeah, that's awesome. See, we're coming up with new stuff that we can do. It's always fun. Hey, guys, I appreciate you so much. This is one of my favorite things I do related to the podcast each month. So it's a lot of fun. I just appreciate it. So thank you guys again for coming on. Thanks for bringing awesome questions, all the service that you do, giving answers to a lot of questions that I think people that are either just starting off on the journey or have been on the journey for a long time will definitely benefit from. So thank you, guys.
You're welcome. Thank you, Drew.
Thank you, Drew.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you for your...
All right, you made it through another episode. Thanks again, and if you'd like to collaborate or come on the show, please email me at thesoberfixpodcast@gmail.com. Have a great day.